Barebones here, and today I'm going to be taking a look at the TWINBLADE. This is a setup that has always been seen as something Kevin's used to mash R1 with no skill, but in the past few months we've been seeing it win rounds in the competitive scene against some of the best players around. So after seeing this and picking the setup up myself, I thought I'd take a look at just why TWINBLADE is able to take stocks over things like PSGS, PSSS, Sham, and Thrusting Sword. Before we get into it though, I'm going to show you one of the rounds from the February EU Festival of Combat, where the green checkmark Chad, Braun the Goat, absolutely annihilates one of the best players to touch this game with the TWINBLADE.
Alright, both of our players get physicked up, and wouldn't you know it, the setup that I mentioned at the start of the tournament, Moonveil off hand axe. This should be very, very interesting to watch. Right away, Braun is getting a lot of damage off. Millicent's prosthesis is putting in a lot of work for him as he gets a lot of damage off of Bean, bringing him all the way down to about 1100 health. Bean does manage to land a Moonveil, but it went through the Ritual Shield Talisman, so it didn't do too much damage. And Braun is currently rocking a 1400 health lead.
Wow.
Definitely sitting very comfortably. Goes for another Moonveil R1. Bean does get his tier popped. He's eating a lot of damage, gets hit by the Flamespick follow-up, and is finished off by the neutral R1 of that TWINBLADE.
So there's a few things that I want to point out from that match. First of all, Braun practically doesn't use anything to break neutral except for running R2. And he first chips their poise with the unreactable first hit from the run R2, which does more than half of the maximum possible poise, meaning it guarantees that first hit to stagger the second time around. And then once that happens, it will true combo into the second hit of the run R2. The one exception to this is when with punishing attacks that make your opponent duck, it is always better to go for run R1 because the run R2 will simply just go over their head. And once he gets that second hit to stagger, he will either A, Flaming Strike for priority or roll catch, or B, R1 follow-up to poise chip and set up for another run R2 combo. It's worth mentioning here though, that the R1 chip only does 40 poise damage and the first hit of the run R2 does 69, so if the opponent has more than 109 poise, this strategy just won't work. And that's about it in terms of how you play TWINBLADE. So long as the opponent does not have Hyper Armor, which replenishes your passive poise, sort of nullifying the effect of poise chipping, this strategy will work against almost all setups. Now, in the case that the opponent does have Hyper Armor, the real answer is to just get off TWINBLADE. Sure, you can win any fight if you play well enough, but Hyper Armor just sort of wrecks the bread and butter of TWINBLADE, and so there's really no point in using it here. Another thing I'll mention is the TWINBLADE can get obliterated by parry. With only 3 to 5 frames between each attack in the TWINBLADE's 2-hit animations, it is near impossible to miss a parry against TWINBLADE with good timing. Parry out of hit stun, impossible to punish on reaction, and will easily catch a buffered R1 on the TWINBLADE side. However, you still can stick to the TWINBLADE against this, it's just not worth holding on to again if you're comfortable with swapping. That's my opinion at least. So in terms of the setup I'm using the twinned Knight Swords. I'm rocking Mushroom Crown, Altered Beast Champion Chest, Crucible Knight Gauntlets, and Beast Champion Greaves. And for the talismans, I'm using Millicent's Prosthesis and Rotten Winged Insignia for the multi-hit damage buff, and then Kindred of Rot's Exaltation. So for this setup specifically, you're going to want to Poison Grease until you proc it, and then Lightning Grease. And if you have all of your buffs stack, you should just absolutely shred health with that combo. And for the stats, I'm going 60 Vig, 31 End, 65 Strength, and 13 Dex, with the extra dex for the stat requirement coming from the Millicent's prosthesis. I will leave all of this at the end of the video, of course, just to simplify things. But beyond that, thank you all for watching, man. Hope you give this shit a try. It's pretty fun to play, in my opinion, and it's fun to learn how all the matchups go. I think it's a decent counter to PSGS as well, so that always feels nice if you don't like playing against that setup. But yeah, thanks for popping in.